what is success. I think right now, today, it's about having a peaceful and harmonious relationship with myself. If you go back and you chart my history, success has looked like vividly different at every stage. Between the ages of sort of 0 and 5, having my father come and go a little bit, it left me with a little bit of what therapists would call trauma. That was complicated, those first few years, and it definitely affected me. The thing that gets me out of bed is like wild ambition, in the knowledge that it scares me. It is highly likely to be unachievable, but I love that. And I look back at RocketMill, people just look from the outside, probably it was an agency, it did really well, it sold, etc. But the fire in us, the soul of the business was about people, and it knew that from day one. It was born, the business, the idea was born from such a healthy place. Its embers had integrity. It's important for people to understand it felt like life and death. We went all in. I don't want people to confuse this all in with hours, but it was a mentality of application when we were there. The biggest sacrifice for me was the space in my mind and how much of it the agency constantly occupied. In that window, I wasn't running or going to the gym or meditating or doing breath work or going to the sauna or I didn't do anything. I was just keeping the lights on. So we lost 10 to 15% of all our revenue on day one of COVID. And we grew by 40% that year. I was only ever interested in the behaviours because that's the true manifestation of what you believe. So I do have one thing that I think maybe could pollinate other people out there, because it's something it's not advice I would give to myself because it was always there, but I think this is really, it can be quite powerful. It's to
I'm on a mission to help the world to see success differently. We're sharing the stories of our guests. I hope to inspire those that listen. This is the Different Hats podcast, produced by H2 Productions. I hope you can join us on this journey. I just wanted to take a moment to talk about one of our sponsors, Nostos, an authentic experience of Greece right here in the heart of Hove. In a world brimming with dining options, finding that one place that captivates your palate and heart isn't always easy. It's about more than food. It's the stories, the ambience, the slice of another world. This is the essence of Nostos, an award-winning Greek restaurant. With traditional recipes passed down through generations, each dish promises a story and a piece of heritage. And Nostos is more than just a restaurant, it's a community contributor. Each dining experience supports initiatives close to their heart, from local charities to cultural events enriching Brighton and Hove's social fabric. They also provide catering services, bringing Greek cuisine to your personal events. For a taste of Greece without leaving town, visit nostos-hove.co.uk. And when you do go, say Sam recommended the feta nests. Oh my God, they are amazing. Okay. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. Delighted to welcome the legend, the man that is Mr. Sam Garrity.
Thanks for having me, Sam.
Mate,
looking forward and dreading this in equal measure.
I know we've always known each other for some time, really. Because obviously I know your brother Ben really well as well. But it's not only recently, I guess, that we sat and had a coffee and a chat and just fascinating conversation about the journey of RocketMill and yourself and where you've been. And yeah, mate, just absolutely delighted to have you on and delve a little bit in and share some of the amazing lessons that you've learned right on the way and with our audience. So I've said, like, obviously you've been really engaged as well with the You All Right Mate campaign, and give up some of your time for the focus group, which I was really grateful for. And this is what we've started off every conversation with for this new series. So it is just a genuine check-in, because I'm trying to put, with the You All Right Mate campaign, I'm trying to put meaning behind that flippant phrase almost that we ask every day. So I'm just, Sam Garrity, are you all right, mate?
I think I am, Sam. Yeah, it's been a tricky year, truth be told. Probably one of the toughest years of my life, which is very unexpected because if you're observing me externally, you see somebody who's, I suppose, crested the zenith, achieved what they set out to. But that in itself brought a new and quite profound chapter in my life. The first year, if you like, of the exit from RocketMill was one which I stand by. I think it was the correct thing to do. It was one where I thought if I made any big decisions in my life at that moment, I'd be making it for a person that wasn't the person I was going to become, if that makes sense. I needed time to habitualize into a new experience, a new existence, one that was maybe slightly slower and more considered and less sort of super high intensity pursuit of a goal and orchestrating a large community, a community by which needs a huge amount of your emotional intelligence. And so I just needed a year to come back to base and figure out what I was going to do. Following that, I started to explore a lot of work around the charity sector. And I suppose I've come to a place now where after a tricky year, I have a new version of what maybe success looks like for me, which I know is another key part of your line of questioning.
Yeah. So, mate, thank you for that. I guess that it's, like you say, we go from the external thing, people would look in and go, of course he's all right, doing really well. And actually, that's one of the things that I've certainly learned from these conversations, that especially with mental health struggles or challenges that we face in life, isn't like it doesn't discriminate, right? It can be wherever we are on that scale. But coming through that, I'd love to we will delve into that. I guess that part of life a little bit later. But today, you're doing good.
Yeah, I believe I am. I'm focusing on me, which sounds really selfish, but it's not. And I think your question, if I'm allowed to steal the host's question, but what is success? Yeah. I think right now, today, it's about having a peaceful and harmonious relationship with myself. Wow. And from that, I want to create a life, which I believe I'm on the cusp of doing. I am taking really positive actions around, but I want a life where my daily existence is about nourishing other people. And that can be the people closest to me, the most important people, my wife, my children, my friends and family. But it has a much broader context in terms of my community. And I believe that if I can have a harmonious relationship with myself, and if I can create a life where I'm nourishing other people through the actions I take on a daily basis, I'm going to have an incredibly rewarding existence.
Oh, I love that. But you say that definition of success that you've just highlighted there, that's quite a new revelation. So what would be, take me back a couple of, let's go back to the beginning. When you were younger, what would you have viewed as success? And then maybe even at the start of RocketMill as well, what was the vision or the view for success then? How have they changed over that? Because I've changed to now, right, where you just mentioned, which is new, but what would they have been back then?
That's a really important question, because I think people might listen to this and they're trying to look for whatever my answer is to pollinate their lives in some way. But I'm in a different chapter, aren't I? I'm in self-actualization. Whereas if you go back and you chart my history, success has looked like vividly different at every stage. So if I go back, very happy childhood, for instance, which we can go into in a bit more detail shortly, but teen years, reasonably sort of underprivileged environment where being invisible was a goal. That was successful. Surviving a day, and that wasn't my home life, by the way. But the school I went to and so on and so forth. I had a window in my late teens where I'd had an operation where I had a plaster cast from the top of my head to my waist. I came out of that and I was thrilled to be out of it after a few months, but started to have panic attacks, like real strong anxiety attacks. And I didn't tell anyone for a couple of years, really. I was having sort of half a dozen a day. So the success in that window was genuinely to keep going to college, to keep getting on the tube and doing my part-time job. Just basically getting through each day. And then it matured to not having a panic attack each day and so on and so forth. Go forward to, falling in love, and the success starts to look like making a success of that relationship. Founding the business, it was very much, I became quite myopic in my view of success there and driving it towards certain milestones. Then having a family and making a success of being a father was a whole new chapter. And then, of course, sometimes, sadly, like material, that house, that moment. I even bought a silly car when we sold the business, which was a bit of fun, but has proven to be a mistake. All the way through to now, what I would describe as purpose. That success looks like purpose. So I think I wouldn't want anyone to listen to this and start giving themselves a hard time, because their view of success at that window in their life might be entirely appropriate, but feel, I don't know, a little less lofty or potentially a bit more shallow. But that's fine too.
I'm really intrigued by it, because there's a couple of bits here I want to touch on. One, like, so many people have maybe got to the position you have, or people I've spoke to around, at maybe our sort of age group, that start to understand that maybe success is more intrinsic and it's based on purpose, right? But what do you think, what would it look like if children, for example, got that understanding of that's what real success is, potentially, at a young age? Do you think that's possible? Or do you think that actually you need to have different elements of success throughout your life to maybe achieve the things that you have achieved?
There's a lot to unpack there. So I think it'd be healthier, rather than teach children potentially about purpose, but some of what your mission is, which is around teaching children not to have such a narrow lens on what success looks like, because success can be varied. But I don't think you can necessarily jump to purpose at the end. At the beginning. You can't just short circuit it. But also, I want to be careful in that I believe what we did with RocketMill, as an example, had strong purpose, had incredible cultural impact in a company and then within its sector, created a material win for, nearly 250 people, probably moved the Brighton property market, but if you ask those people, I still see them in the street here in Brighton and I get a warm embrace, It's, I think that purpose, whilst it looked commercial, it was like very human at its core and at its ambition. It was about enriching people's lives, I think, through growth. But yeah, I don't have a clear answer on what you're saying about children, but I think your work around teaching them that success is a broad church, I think is really healthy. It's not to be the lead singer in a band or Elon Musk or Cristiano Ronaldo. I think success comes in many, many forms, and then underpinning that with purpose being part of it. But I think purpose is allowed to be broader too.
And it's hard, maybe, isn't it, to go back to us bit. I'm teaching kids. We're going into schools and teaching kids that at year 6 are around 10, 11 years old. Like, do you know what your purpose is then? If you ask someone, I think my understanding, and I think the thread I'm trying to go on, is the fact that it's more based around values as a human being. And if we can identify some of those characteristics and behaviours at a young age, then maybe that helps to form that definition of success for us, because we're living a life in alignment with those. So I can identify as say I'm 10 years old and I'm identifying in myself, I'm a curious person, I've got integrity, I'm kind, loving, those type of characteristics. That's the type of person I want to be. So I'm going to do things that enable me to be that person. And then if I live in alignment with those, whatever my job title is, career path or relationships, anything like that, they're just in alignment with those. I think that's what I'm trying to get at, is if that's something that we can instill in children, maybe that helps.
Potentially. I think the age, did you reference 10?
Yeah.
I don't know enough about this. I'm not a child psychologist, but I'm a big fan of kids being kids and giving them the freedom to explore. I think in our culture, we quite often paint ourselves into a corner very quickly in life. It's, do well in your GCSEs, pick your A-levels. Your A-levels define your degree if you're lucky enough to go. You end up in a job. Some of us fall into jobs like I did, and before you know it, you're in your middle years, you've got a mortgage, 2 kids, and you're a recruitment consultant or whatever it is. I'm not knocking that sector. It's tremendous. Yeah. I just think we should have a nice window of freedom to explore who we are. I've started this podcast by explaining I'm trying to still work on myself. I'm 48 years old and I've enjoyed wild success in business and other pursuits outside of it. And I'm still working that out a little bit. Yeah. And I think I used to talk a lot in the agency about, not recognising yourself professionally from one year to the next, constant evolvement, not being afraid of that change. And I think if on a broader timeline, as humans, that happens too, from one decade to the next. We wouldn't have been having this chat 15 years ago with you. I wouldn't have had the insight. You probably wouldn't have had the desire to ask these types of questions. So I think... I don't know. I'd be conscious. I think in your teen years, potentially there's a broader canvas to play with there. There's people trying to start to maybe define a little bit of who they are, and that's where those questions might be relevant.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess the other part of that, which I sort of mentioned, is around because I'm really conscious of the narrative I'm sharing, and sometimes the questions that we ask around this type of subject and success, that it is about, what come out of the collective definition was the ongoing pursuit of fulfillment, right? So, so we're on that path. But I think there's elements that it makes it sound like, not we're all going to be Zen and we're just going to sit there and, find out what our purpose is, and not, because we want people to be still ambitious, right? You want to follow, one of the messages I give to my kids, as much as it's around this, is following their dreams. All I say to them every day is do something that lights you up. That's all I want for them. I want them to do something that they know I'm coming to do this today, that I'm not going to work, am I? What are you doing today? I'm sitting with my mate having a chat on my podcast. Amazing. They see me light up when I talk about that. So you want that for them. And I guess the point I'm trying to get at is that I still believe we can, my belief is that we can try and ask these questions inward and find out what that purpose is and do stuff, but and still be super uber ambitious to do that. I'm, as much as I'm in this headspace at the moment, I'm more ambitious today probably than I've ever been in my life. And I wonder where your view on that, especially with what you have achieved, I guess, and where you've gone down, where are you still ambitious, or where are you on that?
Well, it's interesting you say that. I can't talk about something I'm going to do next year just yet, because it's not kind of public. But when deliberating over that, the thing that tipped me over the edge was wild ambition. And the organisation I'm referring to isn't necessarily in that space at the moment. And the thing that gets me out of bed is wild ambition, in the knowledge that it scares me. It is highly likely to be unachievable, but I love that. But underpinning that, underneath that, there's some tremendous outcomes for the people involved. So that, and I look back at RocketMill, people just look from the outside, probably it was an agency, it did really well, it sold, etc. But the fire in us, the soul of the business was about people. And it knew that from day one. Motivating, inspiring, educating, growing, and welcoming tremendous clients and people to the business constantly in pursuit of, some explicit goals. There was real coherence around what the philosophy was and what was needed if you were to join. So I know we're going to get into that later, but no, your values, if you truly understand who you are as an individual and what inspires you, what your values are, they can only add fuel, and an infinite well of fuel towards some ambitions.
Love that. Take me back. Well, I want to go. Let's get some context then from you. We hinted on obviously your upbringing a little bit, but let's go right back to the start and your upbringing and that. This wild ambition you talk about. Was that something from a young age? Tell me a little bit about what do I need to understand about you and your early context. Do
you want the full? But
yeah,
I mean,
mate, go for it.
I'll be quick.
Let's go for it.
But it's important, I suppose, just to go back to the beginning. So I was born in Liverpool, despite the London accent.
Yeah.
And
hence why you're a Liverpool fan.
Yeah. And we moved to London when I was very young. My dad was a professional boxer. And when I was, shortly after I was born, so boxing, unless you're at the absolute top of that game, it doesn't provide a huge amount of money. So my parents were living, initially with friends and rentals, and then got a council flat. And sadly for my father, he, not too long after I was born, had what they thought was a psychotic episode. So he was sectioned. And my mum ended up back in Liverpool with me, and we were toing and froing a little bit. He came out, my sister arrived, who's 2 years younger than me, and it transpired he actually had bipolar. Now, whether that was something inherent in him that was going to come out at some stage or not, I don't know, or whether the life he pursued tipped the balance against him, I don't know. But that kind of defined his life after having children, really. My parents stayed together, which is, incredible considering what they were up against, and went on to have Ben 7 years later. But yeah, so the early years of my life, and I've only understood this recently by talking to somebody and investigating a little bit, they were tumultuous. As between the ages of sort of 0 and 5, having my father come and go a little bit, it left me with a little bit of what therapists would call trauma, or whatever. But it was very difficult when my mum left me at nursery. It was incredibly difficult when I went to school for the first time, and then I've since learnt that those experiences have defined how I attach to in a romantic relationship. So say with my wife, it defined how I attached initially. And there's all these, you can research it, but attachment styles that we all have. Anyway, so that was complicated, those first few years, and it definitely affected me. My mum worked incredibly hard. My dad didn't work after his boxing career. He had the odd job, but didn't really stick at it, which again left a massive impression on me. I didn't know at the time, but it turned me into somebody who is absolutely committed to something. So if I say I'm going to do it, I'm all in and I'm completely reliable. And that's a kind of a product of what I witnessed. There's no criticism of my dad. He's tremendous guy in so many ways. I'm not. And then school life, if you go up through that, my parents did, my mum did great. We had a very loving home, and they used that Margaret Thatcher's right to buy, got off the council estate. They were both Catholic, so I was very fortunate in that the lads from the estate I grew up with, they all ended up, sadly, at a school that was really underperforming, which had a great impact on their future opportunities. I ended up at some really half-decent schools. As I alluded to, my high school, whilst it's in better form these days, it was quite, if I'm honest, a tad violent. And so my teen years...
Resonate with that.
Yeah, my teen years were, I think, we had a lot of fun, but they were quite complicated in the sense that I speak to my friends now. I've got a lot of friends that I knew at the time, and I've known some of them since I was 5. We talk about, like, just essentially trying to be invisible, just conform, look like everybody else, and get through it. So I had loving home. I had a half decent education compared to those around me, but it was still a slightly tricky environment. And then I contrast that now to the experience my children are having. So they go to a wonderful school in the city here in Brighton. They're coming of age. They're 13 and 15. And Brighton is a remarkably liberal, independently minded place where you can't get attention off anyone. You'd have to be pretty wild. So they're in that setting, and their school, its absolute fundamental kind of ethos is one of kindness, and it really is true when you see the environment. So my kids hop off to school and they're becoming the people they want to be with complete freedom. And I think that's tremendous. That's been probably the best gift I've ever given them, or we as a family have ever given them. So yeah, that's a little bit about kind of my background. I think you tend to want to know, where does the drive come from?
Yeah, because I'm like, for that period of time, like, did you thrive in school? Was you like, did you enjoy it in that sense that you're saying about, just wanting to belong and be part of the crew? But I guess from an education point of view, did you thrive in that sense? And did you ever, I'm keen to as well, just feeding on from that, did you have an idea at that young age what you wanted to do, or what was your ambition? And we talked about ambition. What was your ambition as a teenager? What was the dream?
Well, going back to when I was very young, I wanted to be a bus driver. So I've overshot there a little bit. But no, I had this weird concoction, I think, of real ambition, like lofty ambition, some belief, which I owe very much to my parents, and no application whatsoever. So no hard work. And I put that down to school not really motivating me. I didn't really see, this is terrible, this is not an example for anyone, but I didn't see the point a lot of the time. So I came out, I was one of those kids that did the bare minimum to get to the next stage. And I just treated it like a game. So I barely got 5 A to C GCSEs. And then I barely scraped through the next phase, and I couldn't even do A-levels. I was put on a GMVQ advanced. And then I got into university. By going to university, my mum said, this is how you're going to do it. And she took me to Westminster University. She said, and security was clearly a bit more lax in those days. She said, find the guy that's running this course. Here's his name. Knock on his door. Wait for him if he's not there, and tell him why you want to be on his course and to keep an eye out for your application. And it was that. It was a bit of gregariousness and hopefully a little bit of charisma that got me on the course, because I certainly didn't have the qualifications. But again, I owe that to my mum marching me up there on the tube.
What a lesson! What a lesson!
Yeah, but so I always had a lot of ambition. I remember we maybe come to my career in a little bit, so I don't want to get ahead too much. But I remember being in early jobs. And I hope this doesn't sound arrogant, because it doesn't come from that place. It comes from a place of belief. But I'd be in big organisations and thought, I can do that job, the top job. Instantly, within weeks, thought I can do that. And thinking, how do I get to that point? What is the route? And that was as a very young person. So I had this probably very poorly founded belief.
But is that
I definitely had no experience and very little talent at the time. Just belief, and then desire. So I think that's important, is the drive. So my ingredients, some of which we've just described, that the drive comes from there. There's obviously there's a bit of alchemy here, the DNA, all the rest of it. But some of my situational circumstances, my environment, my upbringing led to this like really fierce commercial drive. And I think that within that, there was this desire, having seen how hard my parents had worked with each other, if you like, on the lowest rung to push on, I was determined to create a very big safety net for me and my family. Like absolutely determined. I wasn't going backwards; we were going forwards.
So
and then within that,
above you, that was the right. Like you said, I guess there's a couple of things there for me. One, that self-belief comes from your mum and dad giving you that belief in you that you can do anything that you put your mind to, you can achieve stuff. And I guess I'm assuming maybe similar with your kids, and I know I'm with mine. You just want them to just whatever it is that they do, whatever they're passionate about, but just believe in themselves wholeheartedly, because that has got to be, because through all your career, certainly through running a business, you've got to have that, right? Because there's going to be some shitty, tough times that if you don't believe in yourself, and how are other people going to be, especially as a leader, I guess, right?
Yeah, what I wouldn't want to do though is misportray this to your audience as I'm an individual with nothing other than complete self-belief. It's not. I believed in myself to achieve or to get somewhere, but that journey was riddled with self-doubt. You know, one of the drivers, I talked about the safety net, one of the drivers was a fear of failure. So that's not always a positive emotion to be feeling. So that fear of failure would drive me to outperform, to work harder, to be more diligent. I'm not somebody who just has complete self-belief. Far from it, in fact. Far from it.
What's your, you mentioned about fear of failure there, what's your relationship like with failure? What was it back then, and has that changed over the
Do you know what
years?
I think it is linked to is embarrassment. I actually think that's what it is linked to. When I've sat and really considered it, failure is, in my head, I suppose, like a public thing. People are aware of your failure. And I think it's linked to embarrassment. And I don't know whether there was a moment in my childhood that left me, a little bit scarred in that sense. But I think that's the link for me, which is silly and is now something I'm far less concerned with. But it had some really positive outcomes for me. It was massively taxing, but it had some great outcomes. And we see this with like a lot of the great sports people that are out there and talk on podcasts and things. They talk about this fear of failure. And Roy Keane's a famous example. That was his drive. It's a very taxing thing. It's very unfulfilling as well, because you don't get rid of that, and you don't, you even when you sell your business or whatever, it doesn't necessarily go away. So there's no milestone you can achieve. You actually have to recognise it, figure out why it's there, and then hopefully remove it.
Yeah, because I guess it's there. Cause look, I know we sort of touched on it when we spoke before, but there's the element of reframing success, which is what, a big drive for me for the whole podcast. But is there an element of reframing failure as well, that it is like I think we touched on it the other day when we were saying about that, in the States, for example, failure is not seen as got such a negative connotation. I think in this country especially, there is embarrassment, there is like failure is a shame comes with it as well. I think, especially if you relate it to business and you go, I've failed at something. Whereas if there was less of a negative connotation to it, and it was seen as a learning experience, like failure was purely just about, if I fail at something, I'm going to learn from this experience, and then I'm going to go and do something better. Do you not think that potentially a healthier relationship that we could, again, back to, I'll keep going back to school and kids, because it so much shapes that early stages in our lives, shapes who we become and what we're about. But if school always set up to go, you pass or fail, right? So the relationship with failure is straight off the bat. You're going, you're not that good at that, you failed at that, and that's a negative thing. Whereas what is it? What would happen if we reframe that slightly?
I've got a couple of answers on this, I think, or thoughts. They're not answers. They're just my thinking. Firstly, I agree that having a better relationship with failure is a positive thing, especially in our country. We have, I think the Kiwis, the New Zealanders call it tall poppy syndrome. Imagine a field of poppies and one rises, gets taller. They snip it off. I think we have a little bit of that in our country. We like to see people, actually, if they get a bit too big, we like knocking them down. I think the Beckhams are a brilliant example of that in this country, where we've, sadly, if people are really honest with themselves, we've enjoyed watching them rise, we enjoyed cutting them down a bit, and we've enjoyed their rise again. There's something really unhealthy about that, but that's probably a side topic. But I think, reframing it a little bit would be good. And I think as long as what led to that failure was still diligent, was still done with the right attitude, with the right volume of effort, and there was learnings taken from it, then it can be rewarding. But I don't think it should be celebrated. There is a lot of editorial out there on social media at the moment, and has been for years now. Celebrate your failures, and failures are essential, and seeking them. And I just, sorry, I hope I don't sound tough. I just disagree. Like, you've got to plan and try to win. And if we're talking business, not necessarily on some of the soft elements of life, but commercially, you want to win.
It's really, I love this. So for me as well, look at someone like the narrative you mentioned. So Stephen Bartlett, I use him as an example. He's I think he's employed a head of failure. So he said, I want us to fail every day, so we learn from that. So he's reframing it in that sense and going, and I guess alluding to what you mentioned about almost celebrating failure in that sense. So,
I'd say I would, if you mind if I chip in there.
Yeah, please.
I think what he's talking about, though, is a role within his company, which sounds like it's innovation, it's experimenting, it's optimization. And if 1 in 10 of those optimizations really works, that's wonderful. But it's not about the whole company failing. He's in a thriving media enterprise.
There's a different context.
He's not employed that person to help sink the ship.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'll get it. 'Cause you're right, and right, there's a different context to it, right? Compared to what we're talking about and what I've just highlighted with him, I guess there's a different context to that. And actually, you're right. There's elements of it that you go, you don't want to go on that line of thought process where you go, no one sets out to fail, right? You don't start a business and go, how quickly can I fail this so that I can, because it's going to be a really good learning. Because it's interesting, actually, because there was a part of me that definitely went down the route of going, and I don't know if I shared this with you before, but where you go, what would it look like if someone, the narrative around failure, so as soon as I said, this happened, I failed at this, instead of your response, which would be, oh, that's a shame, everything okay or whatever, it would be, oh wow, what did you learn from that? Like it wasn't a negative thing, it was more of a positive thing. Would that in my head, that was like, oh, maybe if we reframed it in that sense, that would be a better thing. But are we then encouraging it for the sake of?
No, I think that's fine. What did we learn? What are we going to do differently next time? Turn it into positive, forward-facing momentum, not an autopsy that leads to some sort of self-crisis. But I don't like the thought that every entrepreneur has failed 6 times, or you just hear this nonsense out there, and 9 in 10 businesses in the UK fail, and all of that. Just no.
I guess we we don't have to do that to do it. And I guess you set out with RocketMill to succeed, and you did, right? And maybe because of the underpinning drive was that fear of failure that got you to maybe get as far and as quick or whatever as you did. So it's a balance. I think it's the same with everything that we talk about. There is a balance, and there's different ways of viewing it. But yeah, I do. I think if you've used it, like you mentioned about working to drive you and make you succeed, because I'm not going to fail, whether it's led by embarrassment or whatever it is. I think the damaging narrative sometimes comes around, like you said, when it becomes self-critical of yourself. I think that's maybe where there's a balance to be had there. But
I remember you've just triggered a memory in me, and I remember Alex and I, my wife, we had a little rental cottage in a village called Amberley when we set up the business. That's where we had our first had a Barnaby and Molly there. But it was I remember writing some notes to myself as we began the business, and one of the notes was, if this fails, your friends will respect you and admire you for giving it a go. You know, no one will criticise you. I just needed to talk myself, off the ledge a little bit, in terms of that. Just remembering those things. Your friends will always, and your family will always say, unless it's like a fool's errand, they will always say, fair play for having the courage to go after it.
I love it because on that note, it's the fear of failure that often stops so many people. How many people are sitting here not having the conversation that me and you have had, not maybe have had the success that you've had or any of those things, because they've got this idea, they've got the drive, they've got the self-belief, the passion, all of them things. But the fear of failure will stop them from doing that. Right?
Yeah.
And that's a great way of, I guess, for people listening, what a great thing to think, like, anyone sitting out there thinking about it, and you go, you're fearing failure, but actually your friends, your family are still going to love you, because even if you do go out and
even more so.
Yeah.
Having the courage, because most of us want to try a hand at something ourselves, don't we, at some point? Yeah. That was important to me.
Yeah, I love that. Well, let's talk a little bit then about that early career, I guess, and coming out of university and going, I was talking about sort of ambition, but talk to me a little bit about the early stages of your career prior to RocketMill.
Yeah, I'll give you a quick potted history. So I left university because I was working part-time at the Express newspaper, so a national newspaper in London, and my ex-girlfriend at the time, her father got me a job there. It was in an era where that sort of thing happened, and I was essentially what you would call like a runner. So imagine in the newspaper, there was a big plastic newspaper coming together, right? So it's just sheets of plastic. And I would, each time a page was updated with a new headline, a new picture, some copy as in text, I would be printing it off and pasting it in. So the editors had like a live view of what the paper looked like at any one moment, and I'd fish like pictures from the library and various things. Anyway, that I sort of, again, I just made sure I spoke to everyone. I think one of the things that has been in my positive column as a human and created opportunity for me is I've just viewed everybody the same. They don't, if I see a celebrity in an airport or I think Jurgen Klopp's the only person that could probably leave me a bit stunned. But we're all human, and so I'll talk to anyone. And I think in those environments, it really helped me. So I got to know absolutely everybody in the newspaper. I was half decent at my job, and they offered me a job to come out of university and work on the editorial team, but in production. So fairly basic job, but it got me in. Yeah. And, in talk, I think we're all incentive machines to some degree. And what was clear to me, the academic environment didn't incentivize me enough. It just didn't turn me on. Whereas the minute you started to show me a professional environment with a salary and the potential to increase that and to gain responsibility, that was me. I was off. So that was really important in the context of what we're talking about, that experience, because what I started to do in that role was, imagine there's a huge story that breaks. And I was there on editorial. I was there when Princess Diana passed away. I was there during 9/11. I saw these huge events unfold. And it was just incredible environment to be a part of and to see this come together. But anyway, in instances where big news stories break, somebody has to go and tell the advertising team that they're not going to run their ads in the right places, or we're going to push them back a bit because we need more space for editorial. Anyway, those early journeys upstairs to the 4th floor, I think it was, to talk to the advertising director and have a little bit of a dust up, they showed me that the environment there was very different. So they were younger, they were earning more, and they were the people that went on to run the national newspapers. They came from there. They didn't come from editorial. And in editorial, what I was witnessing was an older cohort on very large salaries, earning final salary pensions, who were being shoved out the door bit by bit. And young journalists were coming in, earning hardly anything, some of them being put on more like freelance type deals, and no security. So I was seeing these two environments and thinking, how do I get to the top? I arrogantly thought I could run a national newspaper from day one, and I was figuring out how I'm going to go and do that. And I really like the look of advertising. So that was like the touch paper for me. It was witnessing what was going on in these two environments, where the winners were going to come through, what was the better career path. And then, you know, that was the start for me in thinking, I'm going to go into advertising.
What did you learn? I'm interested. I know when we get onto the RocketMill story, what I found fascinating about, you know, because I remember when you guys first started out, really, I knew, you know, I think you played in the Fernballs League back going in Crawley when you was based up there. And I think like, one thing I found fascinating about RocketMill right from the early stages was culture. The culture you created from right early on was incredible. And which went ongoing right from, I remember seeing posts that you put out about, you know, people first, and that was something that was inherent right from us. What did you learn at the early stages about culture within, I guess, our business, like obviously different cultures from the advertising to the editorial, I'm assuming. Was there anything that you learned, you took from there into the business?
Huge amounts. So I'll just join up the dots really quickly. I tried to get into advertising. I failed. You know, I didn't celebrate that failure, but I did learn from it. Anyway, I quit. So I left I wasn't going to get into advertising, so I quit. I went off travelling, and I had a really formative experience in Western Australia in Perth, where they only allow you to work a few months at a time for a company. But I knocked doors in Perth, in the suburbs of Perth, for a company called Foxtel, which is like Sky TV. And I learned that I could sell. I was, I think 10 out of the 12 weeks, I sold more Sky TV installations than anyone in the whole of Australia. And I was earning a ridiculous amount of money. And I learned a lot about people during that window. I learned what I was good at. I learned, in terms of communication and getting deals closed. And that formed a little bit of a block of self-belief that when I did come back a year and a half or so later, I went straight into advertising. And I didn't go into the route I was planning, which was classified. I went straight into display advertising, a little bit supposedly viewed as a bit further up the food chain. And that was it. It kicked it off for me. So, and my career went between Express newspapers and the Daily Mail on Sunday. So I spent 2 stints at each of those, which is quite rare. And this is where, it's a long-winded answer, but coming to your point, what did I learn? One of those environments, Express newspapers, was lean, hungry, and a challenger brand in the market. So you had to fight for every bit of advertising you got, and you had to negotiate so hard on the yield, and you had to know everything that was going on in the market. And then go to the Mail, where literally if you're having a tough day, you just open the window a little wider and the advertising flew in. It was all about, they were market leaders, so it was just about negotiating high yields. It was very much, you weren't selling, you were negotiating. And I remember now my 3-month appraisal when I joined the Mail on Sunday, and they sat me down and they said, wonderful, great news, we'll take you on. But we do have some feedback. And I got told to stop working so hard. I got told to sort of essentially socialise more, integrate more, network, because that was an important part of success within that organisation. And I'd come from the Express, where it's just like work like a demon, get the competitive advantage. But I think taking that challenger brand mentality into a market leader caused a tiny bit of friction, nothing too bad, but just I got told to simmer down. It didn't really chime with how I wanted to behave professionally. So that was a little learning. The other thing, so I learned a lot. What does a market leader look like and behave like? What does a challenger brand look like and behave like? And where their positions in the market, pricing, etc. But I also learned about two wildly different cultures. The Express newspaper group at the time, it was fierce, and fear was reasonably prevalent. The Mail on Sunday was like a family. They would party hard all the time together, and they were big believers in culture. And it was a bit, people overuse the word cult, but it was, you're in or you're out. You knew if you fitted in or not. And I learned a lot about what good looks like, or what chimes with me and what doesn't. And it's, by the way, it's not exclusive. There were some tremendous bits at the Express, and some bits I thought, if ever I'd run a company, I would do that differently. And exactly the same at the Mail on Sunday. And I think I really benefited from like engineering and pushing towards getting those moves. They were very informative. If I'd have stayed at one place, which would have been very easy, I wouldn't have that grounding. I wouldn't have taken those learnings. But there's something in me, and again, I can't diagnose it, but I needed to tread virgin territory. Like, I needed change. I needed to learn. I needed to push on. I couldn't just sit there.
Again, does that lead back to the ambition, self-belief, wanting to progress, wanting to succeed, wanting to, you mentioned, I guess, about family and that rung of where I want to be more than that. Was it that I guess back to that drive element?
Yeah, I think I was restless. Yeah, I think you've hit upon something there. If I think about myself, there were certain times where I felt like, it wasn't exclusive to any one environment, but where I just felt like that, in that pursuit of pushing on, I felt like a bee trapped in a room, bouncing off the windows, which paints me as like probably quite a disruptive force, which I don't think I was at all. But I was just impatient, and sometimes the moves were wrong, moved too quickly, and then the role that I probably was hoping would came up a month later or whatever. So it wasn't always smart. But yeah, a little bit of restlessness and just utter desire to push on.
And out of those two camps, what did you feel aligned with you more? Like, what out of the Express and the Daily Mail, where did you? Was there one that you particularly felt more at home at, or?
So I felt more alive at the Express. Okay. I felt way more alive because it felt like life and death. You were
and you thrived on that.
Loved it, yeah. The competitiveness of it, I loved. I wasn't entirely comfortable with the comfort of a market leader.
Yeah. And what I guess, not again taking it into a business context and running your own business. We often live a lot in that fight or flight, do or die type elements of those skills that because you sort of alluded to at the beginning almost, where if you want to go out and maybe go and play golf or something like that, you're running a business, you're going to go and you want to have a little bit of an easy vibe, maybe where you're not going to achieve that. Whereas if you've got that drive and that ambition and you've got that fight or flight and you're there and you thrive in that thing, when shit hits a fan and it's really tough, you've got enough to get through, I guess.
Yeah, I think you're alluding to that early conversation maybe with Ben, where when Ben had the idea to set up RocketMill, it was the first conversation was, is this a lifestyle company or not? And it took a second to answer that question. But for anyone who, for your listeners, a lifestyle company might be somewhere where we work 4 days a week, play a bit of golf on a Friday, or I'm at school, pick up every day. The opposite of that is the opposite. It's relentless pursuit of trying to create something massive. And that's not to say that we sacrifice time with our family or whatnot, but we were completely dedicated to creating something substantial.
Well, just as we go, 'cause I really want to delve into that part. But just before, what was the turning point for you between roles and stuff for you and Ben having that conversation to go? Because up until then, was there any ambition to run your own business? Did you have that?
Constantly.
You always wanted to.
So I think I either wanted to run a company or run my own company.
Yeah. Okay.
And that was going to, in the environment I was in, that was going to take a very long time. Okay. I'd probably be still chipping away at it now to get, if I was fortunate enough, and I probably wasn't cute enough to play the games required, but I probably wouldn't have got to the top.
So, and then your brother presents an idea to you, and that's where, that's the turn,
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot there. So my wife and I decided pre-children, she made me promise when we first met, if we're going to have a family, you've got to take me travelling before we have the family. And so we'd had a few years together and bought a place in town, and we decided to sell it and go travelling. And we had a year and a half travelling some very remote, beautiful parts of the world together, all places neither of us had been. And we designed what our future life might look like. There was a lot of time to talk. It was brilliant. We came back with a clear idea, but within the latter...
How old was you then? How old were you been then?
I want to say like 31, 30, 30. Yeah, 30.
Yeah.
And then during the latter stages of that, I remember my brother emailing saying, I want a phone call, got an idea. And I was in this hostel in Delhi, and my in-laws, Alex's parents, were there at the time, so I took this phone call. And we had a bit of a chat and ran through it. And some of my timelines might be a bit confused. Ben will probably pick me up on this. But anyway, we had a chat about his idea. I ended up back home for Christmas. And then at Christmas, he presented the idea to me. And the foundations of this idea are really important, I think, for this conversation. So Ben had left the Express newspaper group. He'd worked there too. He'd had his grounding in sales, and he moved into digital. But the internet was really starting to come to the fore. And he moved into a directory. So, you think like yellowpages.com or yell.com, that sort of thing, where if you imagine the way it worked in the early stages of Google, if you needed a plumber, you would look on Google for a plumber if you were starting to use the internet, and Google would surface results that would predominantly directories, so you'd have to go into another form of searching for your plumber, like yell.com, touch local, etc. Now, Ben was working within one of those directories, and they were selling those customers SEO and PPC. But SEO and PPC at the time, if you think about it, they were applying it to their own domain, to the directory. You were just a listing within it. So he could see the future was that Bob the Builder was going to have his own website, and he was going to have his own campaigns. And he felt quite passionately at the time that the product they were buying wasn't right. And it was burning, it was eating him alive. He's got real integrity, and he actually didn't like selling it. And so it was waking him up in the middle of the night with excitement, this idea to help them go it alone. So that it was born, the business, the idea was born from such a healthy place. Its embers had integrity. And he showed me the idea. I liked the idea. It made complete sense instantly to me. And so the conversations moved towards what it might look like. And so Alex and I'd sold our flats. We had some funds there that helped get us started, but we never once in the whole journey took funding from anyone. It was always organic. And that was it, really. I made a decision on the phone. I remember talking to him on the phone in Delhi, and I remember going back up to the rooftop. It was the end of the day. My wife was sat there and my in-laws, and we ordered a beer and toasted, and I said, right, I'm going to go in.
What was it? What was her response here, like Alex at the time?
She's incredibly relaxed in that capacity, and sort of believes, I suppose, that we're all sort of in the flow of the universe. It's doing its thing. No, there are no coincidences, and she's pretty relaxed, and also maybe believed in me. I don't know, but I maybe felt you'd have to ask her this question. By the way, I'm just interpreting it. Maybe felt like it was an itch I had to scratch, and we'd talked about it for long windows of time whilst on that trip.
Yeah, so it weren't just out of the blue. Like I'm working here. We've given up. We've travelled for a bit. I'll get back and find my next career. You talked about that there was obviously a desire there. There was a talk about I'm going to run one day. I'm going to start something. I'm going to get to the top. I'm going to run my own business of some kind. So it was always, it wasn't a new conversation, I guess.
No, and a recognition that there is this career to go back to. Probably I wasn't going to struggle for work, but I don't want anyone out there to think it wasn't risky. The nest egg was put on the line. We'd done really well up until that point of making money, buying a place, and we tossed it all in and went travelling, and then bet the farm on a business idea. We came home from travelling. We lived in my sister's loft in Rains Park in London. Alex was pregnant with Barnaby. We didn't have any income. We moved into my parents after that. Then we moved into a rental rurally. Ben and I were meeting on Mondays in my parents' sitting room in our suits, by the way.
I love that.
In our suits to do cold calling and
Really?
to smash the yellow pages. That was where we were going. We were going to take the leads out of there. But, I suppose it's important for people to understand it felt like life and death. We went all in.
Because this is what I find. I remember that first conversation where this is what I find fascinating. Like that right at that early start, that conversation you just alluded to. Then, is this a lifestyle business? Is it? Are we all in? And within a second, both of you're all on the same page, going, we're all in, and we're going to do it. But do you think that they're? Because what did you run it? 13 years, was it? 13 years, wasn't it? You RocketMill, and right through all that stage, was it constantly that thing where we're all in, and this is how we're running the business right from the start, and you've carried that on all the way through that 13 years? That was the. And do you think that there's the only real way to succeed in business to that level? You've got to be like that.
So your first question, the answer is yes. We were all in all the time. I don't want people to think we were working till 4 a.m. every night. We weren't. I need 8 hours. And I was at home pretty much every night with Alex and the kids. So there was, I don't want to use the word balance, but I was there every weekend pretty much. I think I only worked a few weekends, like half a dozen weekends in about 10 years. So I don't want people to confuse this all in with hours, but it was a mentality of application when we were there. It was fierce drive whilst we were there. So the answer to your question is yes, throughout the entire time. What was the second part of your question?
So I guess that point of going, see, you're all in all the way, for businesses to succeed at that level, is there an in-between, or is it that?
So there are the absolute outlying stories that you hear from time to time about somebody creating a disruptive application, piece of software, bit of code, idea, whatever, where they get bought within a year, 2 years, and they probably went hard at it and disrupted something, and a consolidator bought it. Most stories in business require application for a significant volume of time, you know, at least sort of your 5-year window, probably more. I think my experience tells me that you absolutely need that, and it's competitive, and social media tends to point people in, or surface content for people that's along the lines of how to be a millionaire in these 5 steps, or how to successfully do this. You know, I see it in even like you're running, how to be a sub-3 marathoner by doing X, Y, and Z. It's not. It's like you've got to run 130k a week or something. You know, like it's hard work. It's endurance, and I see it like sport. Like it is bloody competitive. You will have to, you know, not at the expense of others necessarily, but you will have to win. And to win, if we think about sport, you're going to have a very clear plan. Every member on your team needs to know what that plan is, and you know what the goals are, what the tactics are. They need to be fit as a fiddle. They need to believe in you and the business as a whole. And then when they get on the pitch, they need to perform brilliantly and cohesively as one. It requires it requires a lot of you. Not all of you, it requires a lot of you. And I think I'm concerned that people think you can go and achieve these things half-hearted. It's just not true.
Need a new van? Why not pop down to Rivervale in Brighton? Explore our range of new and used vans, lovingly prepared and ready to work just as hard as you do. Rivervale, making motoring manageable.
Endurance, sorry, Sam. Yeah. Endurance is
key.
Is key because you will inevitably have windows where it's suboptimal, and you have to be able to endure. You can't be flaky. You've really got to have some resilience. And I think having Ben alongside me was very helpful. I wouldn't have necessarily, I think I could do it on my own now, as in lead a company on my own, because I'd be doing it with experience and less risk because I've made some money. First time round, having Ben by my side was critical. But yeah, you've got to be able to endure.
There's a few things. First thing is the balance side of it, like to that endurance, that resilience you're talking about. Was there, like, you look back over the 13 years, you mentioned about, I was still at home, nights with the kids, weekends off. Was there a cost? Was there a sacrifice to achieving what you've achieved?
So I tend to, whether this is peculiar or not, I don't really know, it's just me, but I tend to look at everything as a bit of an equation. So if I want to achieve that, or if I want to do that, it's possible, but what goes into it, what are the ingredients, and what therefore might it diminish? There tends to be a cost, a sacrifice. Anyone who kids themselves that there isn't is lying. Now, for me personally, I felt like the biggest sacrifice I made was in my mind. It was playing Lego with, my son Barnaby or something, and sometimes thinking about business because I was myopic and obsessed and determined to be successful with it. So I think that was the biggest sacrifice for me, was the space in my mind and how much of it the agency constantly occupied. And then quite often, I talked earlier on about the emotional intelligence that you have, and that viewing that as a battery each day. Quite often the agency, because it was a huge amount of people, it just left me with very little. So returning home sometimes with to a young family and a wife who's contending with that, and your emotional intellect being diminished, that's not great. That's a sacrifice.
Because I guess there's I think I've been guilty of this in the past, and certainly one of the 5 pillars that come out of the research and these conversations is presence, right? And I think there's, I'm assuming obviously what you're alluding to is that there's a yes, over that 13 years, I was home with the family, I was there every weekend. But are you really present in them moments? And I guess that I'm assuming that's what you're sort of alluding to. Like, actually, yeah, I was there, but I wasn't really there because the space is taken up in your mind of the agency, of the business, and because you were all in. And I guess is that an element of the sacrifice?
100%, yeah. I was there, but not present. Not all the time, mind. Just moments. But I think an important point to make here is if you... I read a book before starting the agency, and one of the parts was all about this. You are going to have to make sacrifices. And the most important part of that is recognising it first, probably annotating it, understanding the elements of your life and where this thing's going to encroach or leave less time for, and then communicating it to the most important people around you and making sure that you all agree that's a price worth paying. And I think Alex and I were pretty good early doors at knowing this was going to be quite full on. And I was lucky in that Alex at the time, she was content with her choice to be with the children. So I had that base. I knew that they were with the best person in the world for them, and that freed me up. And we all knew what was going on. So I never got a hard time if I was, an hour late, or if I was having to put my dinner in the microwave, which wasn't often. It really wasn't often. But I think being cognizant of it and communicating it, they're the keys.
Yeah, and it is, you're right, community, that level of support within a family environment is, like you said, it's like you're on that journey together, right? She was all, like, again, back to, I guess, that first conversation, are we all in? Are we doing this all properly, or are we just going to have a go at it and see what happens? No, we're all, and I guess all in means we're all in, and we're supporting each other on that, that path. I'm really keen up for people listening, and someone maybe even start of that journey, just started an agency, just started their business. What would be the biggest piece of advice that you maybe wish you had at that point, at the start of that journey?
Be braver.
Really? In what sense in that?
Still think I was too cautious, too concerned with failure and not planning constantly for success. That took a long time. First 5 years, by the way, if you looked at, you said the body of work was 100%. Yeah, so I reckon 80% of it was done in the first 5 years, of the effort, the toil, the stress, the planning, the fear, like all of it. I've described this before, and I appreciate it paints it out like it's just me. It's not me, it's a team. But setting up a company, I felt like I was like, with people around me, pushing this massive boulder up a hill. Right? And I think I've borrowed this off someone else, but you're pushing the boulder up a hill and you're saying to other people, come on, we can do it. We can get there. We'll be all right. And you're really trying to cajole and get people to believe in this mission, and other people come and help you push that boulder up. And it gets a little bit easier as time goes on. But at some point you crest the hill and the boulder runs away from you. And there's so much momentum that you're chasing it, desperately trying to keep it in line. And I think that first 5 years, getting that boulder to crest the hill, that's undoubtedly, that's where all the work went in. It was so easy thereafter because you had the power. You had momentum, we had finances, we had a balance sheet, we could bring brilliant people in, we create amazing senior leadership teams, and, they're doing the heavy lifting for you, and you're the best CEO's desk is empty. You know, I was getting out the way of our business most of the time because everyone was running really fast and exactly in the right direction. So a lot of the time you're like, actually the best thing I can do is leave them alone, not add to them. But and you, Sam, sorry to bring you back. You mentioned balance earlier, and you know I have an opinion on that. I think because it's a constant thing. Is it seek balance, balance. Like balance would suggest that every component of your life would exist in equilibrium. They're all equal. That's just not true. You'll have a week where it's crazy and, you know, maybe you can't hit the gym as many times or whatnot. But I think it's probably good for people to analyse their own lives and what's important to them, which parts of the ingredients of their lives they're not going to sacrifice ever. They're not going to place in danger. They're not going to allow it to diminish, and reconcile that. But I think it's in flux all the time. I'm probably over-indexing right now on like self-care and looking after my body and my mind. In the past, I've completely neglected that because other things have needed my attention. I think the important thing is recognise that it flexes, but don't let the most important things break. Family, friends.
How did you then at them points, because there must have been them times, how did you keep that in check? Like when you're all in a maybe the balance is a little bit out of kilt, for example, you are not running, you're not, you know, you are all full on the business. Was you self-aware enough at them points to go, and what did you do to get this?
The answer to that is I didn't. There was a window of time I can recollect where we had 2 children in nappies. We were building a house. Again, that is a whole other story, but we completely bet the farm on that. No bank would lend us money. We ended up with a family in the East End of London who lend money to commercial developers, lending us money, and we could have lost it all. Like we could have, not the business, that was safe, but we could have lost it all. And we had this young company that wasn't kicking off much cash at all. So in that window, I wasn't running or going to the gym or meditating or doing breath work or going to the sauna or like, I didn't do anything. I was just keeping the lights on. And the way I was handling that was work hard, come home, be with Alex and the kids. When the kids went to bed, Alex and I share a bottle of wine. And, you know, that was a treadmill we were on for a little while, and we both kind of realised that's not great. So that we calmed that down a bit, and I invested a little bit back into myself. And I did that by booking a marathon. And then on came the running journey, which is not for this podcast. But the answer to your question is I didn't. I completely screwed it up once or twice in there. But it's just stopping yourself and then knowing how to flick a switch quite quickly. You know, for me, it was booking a big event. Okay, well, I'm going to have to now train. Fear of failure and embarrassment at the race.
And I guess I don't want to. We won't go too much into the running thing, but there's so many parallels with running a marathon or running to the level, and I guess to running a business as well, right? Like you alluded to a few in that earlier about the endurance element, and you know, I guess from more so, I'm keen to just tap into your incredible mindset, like to achieve what you did in business, and then to run a sub 3 hour marathon as well, and to achieve what you've done in there. For what that mindset that you've got, where talk to me a little bit about that, and that I guess does it again. Are we going back to the drive and the fear of failure? Load of things that. Well,
okay. So I always feel a little uncomfortable with some of this because what you're asking me to do is then praise myself, right? So I'll try to observe what I think I bring. Clarity. So the ambition and all that, we've talked about that. I think everyone's got the message. Yeah. Clarity and organisational elegance. So with the ambition comes the goal. How we get there, I think I've always been quite good with the help of a team of giving that absolute clarity. So I'll give you an example. When we got to 200 people-ish at RocketMill, I always challenged myself. If I brought you in there and I said to you, ask anyone these 3 questions, I challenged myself that they gave the same answer. So what's our philosophy, which was the most important thing. And you knew it, people first. Yeah, and everyone chants that now. We were doing it 10 years ago. People first, by each one of these, the couple of words, but they meant a lot. Everybody knew the depth of it, but it was important they had that recall. So what's our philosophy? People first. They would instantly do it. What's our strategy? Now, everybody talks about strategy. It's one of my pain points. For me, let's just think about strategies. How are we going to win? How are we going to beat the competition? That's really what you're talking about when you talk about strategy. That was total performance, and everybody understood exactly what that meant. And then it was like, what's our goals? It was plus 25% every year. Grow the business by 25%. I think our last 5 years, so we're a mature company, our last 5 years, our compound annual growth rate was about 35% every year. Yeah, so we were motoring, but we had coherence. So your question, what am I bringing? I suppose just rigor, organisational elegance.
Organisational elegance, I love that.
That was key, coherence. Then I would add a couple more things. Firstly, instinct. Yeah, so I think I have a strong instinct about human beings, whether they're complicated, whether they're uncomplicated, whether they're fundamentally going to be additive to that organisation or not. Like, I would meet every single one of them in interviews. I would induct every single one of them. First 2 hours were always with me. I'd meet them upstairs, give them their induction, like in a like a portfolio, show them what their first week looked like, take them downstairs. The whole agency would be lined up ready to cheer them, and they had no idea what was going on. Had a little GoPro on somebody to Bertie, it was normally one of our guys who was there pretty much from the start and named our business actually. He would film it. The first email they got in their inbox when they'd finished touring them round was that video. They were encouraged to share that online. So instantly all of their former colleagues, when they announce where they've gone, that's what they see, which spreads the culture. And then I'd spend a couple of hours with them, getting them coherent on those three elements of the business, and making it very clear to them that RocketMill, whilst it would win relentlessly the awards for best places to work in, Sunday Times and stuff like that, it's not a comfort blanket. Yeah, we'll look after you. Like, we had people that would crash their car and we'd write them a check. Really, really unorthodox ways of working with people. We would pick them up when it's tough, when life got really tough outside. We would 100% look after them and their careers, help them grow, nurture them, drive them, motivate them, but they had to meet us halfway. And we would give them trust from day one. It was never earned trust. We will trust you 100%. It's yours to screw it up. But we would meet them halfway. So it's very clear it's not a comfort blanket. This is a demanding, high growth, environment where you're going to have to evolve quickly, and you need to be unafraid, and you need to contribute. You need to add at a cultural and a commercial level to the business. So there was clear expectations, a real demand, but then on the other side of that was, we have absolutely got your back. So instinct was the point, but the final bit I would say, and it maybe come across a bit there, hopefully, I don't know, belief. So what I think I could do in leading a company was get a large group of people to believe in, like, the leadership team, in maybe me, and that we were going to achieve what we were setting out to do. But I think fundamentally under it all was belief in us as a group of humans, that we were worth fighting for because we were good people. And I can share a quick anecdote if you want around that. Just occurred to me then as an example of the sort of behaviours that we exhibited. So I think it was no more than a week before Boris Johnson announced the first lockdown. So we had no idea about what was coming. There was enough in the news to sense that, okay, we're going to get sent home. There was no announcement from Rishi Sunak about the furlough scheme. And we had a board meeting, and I said, the question I posed to the board was, how would you feel if you were one of the team? And they said, well, we'd be nervous, wouldn't we? Be scared about our jobs, scared that we're going to lose clients. Possibly you lose your home. Who knows what's going to happen? It was very uncertain times. So we said, okay, well, what's our balance sheet look like? And we had, again, going back to the operational elegance, we knew all our numbers instantly. And we looked at it and we made a non-scientific guess at how long this thing might last. And we got the team together. So it was the last time the whole team got together for, probably about a year. And we said to them, right, here's what we know. And here's how we think you're feeling. So we are going to guarantee all of your jobs. And so we immediately gave them a sense of comfort and relief. But then we said, we've got a balance sheet, we run a sensible company, you've contributed to that growth and strength and stability, so we're going to step up. We'll step in for you, we'll guarantee all of your jobs, but you're going to have to fight for us. So it was instantly turned into, we are going to, when everyone else is sat around watching Netflix, we are going to fight. And they repaid us. Like, we grew, so we lost 10 to 15% of all our revenue on day one of COVID. And we grew by 40% that year. Now, admittedly, things came towards us. The digital economy came towards us. It was needed. So we were looking at an open goal, but I don't think many grew as much and as quickly as we did in that window. And it was down to, I'm sure some of that was down to how we treated our staff in that time.
I remember you sharing, and I remember meeting Ben during lockdown when we could get back out, and I remember him saying a similar thing, like that type of element right at the start. This is what we've done. We've grown. And because I'm running a business magazine at the time, speaking to loads of business owners, sitting on loads of networking online Zoom things, and the majority of organisations were struggling. The majority come, shit at a minute, we're really struggling. But I've always been an optimist as I am. I love the positive energy. I remember coming away from speaking to Ben and just being so infused by the fact that people, and it's not all doom and gloom. I loved it because it gives people hope, right? When you speak to people who are doing well. But I love the fact that you take control of that from a leadership point of view. You take control of that and give that, and actually what a way to get everyone on side, right? To get everyone on board, to get that belief that we're all in this together, right? We're all in this together, and the rewards are gonna be this, and we're all in this. Because I'm really keen to those three things that you mentioned to me about, like every single part. When did that? Was that something? How early on was that in place? The people first.
Very quickly, yeah. So some of it was fundamentally it was in our hearts. We'd both been in environments where we'd seen people treated quite poorly, and we were not for that. We'd seen our mum work as a caterer within finance businesses up in town, and sometimes some businesses treated her brilliantly and others less as an equal, and we were just bloody determined to treat everyone the same and look after them. But let's not forget, if behaving like that taught us that it was bad for the business, we might have looked at one another. But we were bringing really good people in and looking after them, and they were producing tremendous work. So it was symbiotic. It's wrong for me to portray this as like an entirely selfless thing. It wasn't. We looked after people, and it inspired them to do brilliant stuff for our clients, which in turn helped the business grow.
But that's culture, isn't it? I'm so fascinated by culture because I think I might have shared with you. I think that there was one thing. I think the first business when the salon closed after 3 years, I think if I could pinpoint two things for me, one was I was a boss, not a leader. I think there's a difference between that. I went in with a preconception of what it was like to be a leader, and I was the opposite to that. I was a boss. Don't think I inspired or the things that you mentioned. And the other thing was culture. Just that by being like that, you create a different type of culture. Us and them, not all in it together, not a team, which lends itself to me not being not living an authentic life, really. I was living a life that was the opposite to that. I was not the type of person I am, and I was trying to be someone I wasn't, hence why I guess it didn't work. So I always find culture so fascinating. And the fact that, I guess you and Ben from the start, that this is the culture we're going to build here, and that went all, and I guess leading on to that, for everyone to win, because even like, I'd love to tap into that, even to come into selling the company, right? Talk to, because it was the ETO's scheme. What is the
EOT?
EOT, sorry, yeah. EOT scheme. Like, talk to me a little bit about that, because that was for ultimately then to get to, so everyone won out of it.
I mean, I am going to just rewind a tiny bit, and then I'll come immediately onto the sale. To suggest, I would be concerned that somebody thinks out there that they can design a culture. So that again is, I've used the word already, it's alchemy, you know, but you can do some things that contribute beautifully to that alchemy. Now, you can improve yourself bit by bit, and you can learn and whatnot. But my view was, on top of, you know, the inherent people Ben and I are, and what's important to us and how we wanted to behave, there are a few things. Firstly, every person you welcome to your business and client, by the way, not I'm talking in the context of an agency here, they will add or subtract to your culture. And you've got to be mindful of that. You're the gatekeeper to that. So we would hire people, we'd make decisions quite quickly if it wasn't right. Not on cultural fit necessarily. It wasn't that, you know, it wasn't like that. It's about being additive. Like, our culture shapeshifted constantly. It wasn't something we enshrined and it was a perfect shape and you had to come in and fit to it. It's, are you going to add to it? You know, I used to think when interviewing people, I really don't want to work with people where I need a double espresso just to have a chat with them. You know, I want them to bring energy, and clients too. So we wouldn't be afraid of losing a client if it was in the interests of the team. We actively removed some clients over the years, regrettably, because they were, you know, their nature wasn't quite right for the team. It's not that they were too demanding, never mind a demanding client, but just some of the behaviours. And the other thing I was going to say about culture, a lot of people listening to this probably aren't old enough, but the famous scandal in the US in terms of Enron had their values chiselled into a marble plinth in this gigantic foyer of their headquarters. And they were the largest sort of morally bankrupt business in the US. And a lot of the legislation we have today in regards to being able to entertain clients and so on, and bribery and so on, it's all related to that. Now, they had their values chiselled out. They were words. They're not behaviours. And I think it's very important when people diagnose, like there's a lot of people selling value work, and you know, will come in and will help you diagnose the values in your business. And lots of companies spend ages over this. I was only ever interested in the behaviours, because that's the true manifestation of what you believe, what your values are. So we never spoke about values. We always spoke about behaviours. And that translated very quickly for people. Okay, behave like that. And that was that. I think that was a really good school of thought for our culture.
Two things, behaviours. What were those key behaviours within that, and what, like, from a leadership point of view as well? What behaviours, not them values or something, but what behaviours make a great leader, in your opinion?
So I'll come back to the second part, because I'm absolutely stumped at the moment and I'll be hoping that something comes to me. But the first part, I think an example, we wrote a book on this. It was this beautifully presented book about behaviours, and just some of them were, about, I mentioned earlier about evolving, not being afraid to change, that we seek professional evolution every year. You shouldn't be recognisable, challenging yourself on that front, not being afraid to be uncomfortable, all those things. About looking after each other, how you can contribute to everyone's day, whether it's, the security guard when you walk in the foyer, from that person to whoever's leading the company and everybody in between, you can look after them. You can check, going back to your thing of, are you all right, mate? We can check in on one another. We can contribute or take away from someone's experience by sitting next to them and the way we behave. So it was always about that. Be additive to this. But yeah, I can't recollect all of them. There was a ton of them in there, but they're just little cues. So what behaviours make a good leader? Personally, I think treating everyone the same. Like, that's something that I feel really is important. Like, and when I say that's not managing everyone the same, because just a quick example. Imagine I draw a square on a board and a squiggle. What one are you?
Square.
You're a square. I'd have thought you were a squiggle. But my point is, like, loads of people respond differently to that. We are all, we don't all sit in those two camps, but you can't manage the square the same way as the squiggle. So when I say treat everyone the same, I mean, we're all human beings. Respect one another. Show interest in people the same way. I think one of the things we did well within the business was that, but equally there was just no room for politics. I know everyone says, there must have been politics. You had no access to me. It wasn't like if you played golf and I played golf, we could play golf. No. I very rarely went to the pub. I didn't have a drinking buddy or whatnot within the team. I would leave dues at a respectable hour. I know that some of the team are probably going to laugh at this and pull up a few vague memories. But, in general, treat everybody the same, and then do your damnedest to make sure there's no room, because it starts with you, no room for politics.
Because I suppose, especially as you grow as a team, like 200 odd staff, like, does that, because you say, like, we're going to treat everyone the same, but it's got to be, I guess, then everyone's on that level. But do you have to, as a leader, as someone, as a CEO, that you have to have that distance from people still?
I kept a healthy amount of ground between me and individuals, so that having difficult conversations was not difficult. I think one thing that's just occurred to me, actually, it's not necessarily a behaviour, but it is. Well, I suppose it is. But if you're going to lead a business for a length of time, it's going to change dramatically. So for me, the agency every 3 years was a whole new company almost. Knowing what phase you're in and knowing what leadership is needed in those moments is key. So COVID, as an example, it's like wartime general leadership. There were other times, which I've alluded to earlier, where we were growing so quickly, my job was to get out of the way. And some people say, what's your leadership style? I'm like, no, I would augment the company and the moment it's in with an awareness first of exactly what was happening, and then equip myself and act and behave in a way that was, I suppose, suited and needed at that particular window. And it didn't mean in any way, shape or form that I was coming across as almost like a schizophrenic leader. Not at all. But you can't just lead your way. And at an individual level, you certainly have to change your style for every, not for everyone, but for different cohorts of people.
I want to move on to the sale. I do want to talk about that, and I want to talk about the scheme and how. I remember that. I'm one of the main reasons I think I'm really keen, because actually from a outside on people listening and this narrative around success, you go, right, okay, we set out, I'm starting a business, I'm going to grow it, I'm going to get to this point, exit, sell, make loads of money, big win, right? Fulfilled, Euphoria, all of them things. What's your feeling the day that it sells? You sell, was there that? Talk to me about the actual feelings around, was it euphoric?
Mm-hmm. So we essentially sold the business twice. So that's like the first thing to mention. They were very different feelings. First time was an employee ownership trust. So we'll refer to that as an EOT for the, that was incredibly fulfilling, but then in terms of the decision, but unfulfilling on the day we announced it because the team didn't quite understand it. So it took a little while to embed it. And once we did, it was very gratifying, and it led to lots of behaviours that were very, very enriching for the company. And then the sale, the trade sale to PMG, the joy in that was compounded by the EOT. So it essentially meant every single member of our company, including one chap who had worked there for 2 hours that morning, received a lot of money. And they were all paid out on 2 different levels. So one half being how long have you worked here? One being how senior are you? So related to your actual salary. So everybody did very well out of that. And I remember we celebrated, it was coming up to, we're almost bang on 2 years today. So we had our Christmas party the day or so after the deal. And that was like being at a wedding where 200 people were getting married. It was unbelievable. And I remember Ben saying to me, the EOT, if you do an EOT, it's very difficult. Like the legislation's not incredibly helpful when you if you do come to a trade sale or you sell it on. So it was a very tough deal to do. But he said, I remember him saying, it's so worthwhile. Seeing everybody that evening, it was tremendous. It was very fulfilling.
Because I guess that euphoric moment, because it's a shared euphoric moment, right? It's not that you and Ben have sold the company, you've made a ton load of money, and then the people, the 200 staff just carry on working for PMG, whoever it is, and they just carry on their lives, and you go off into the sunset. And I can understand where maybe the elements of fulfillment won't be as rewarding as they are when you look around, because ultimately, again, one of the pillars, relationships and the journey that you're on with you've built that company with the people there. They've been on that journey with you, and through the shit as well as the good times and all of them bits in between. And to then have that moment, like, was there that where you and Ben stood next to each other looking around and going, fuck, we've done this. We've done it.
Yeah, there were plenty. I remember one time at the end of that party, those that had managed to stay on their feet to the end, they played Rocket Man on the, and it was by chance. I don't know whether someone but Ben and I were in the middle of the team dancing away, and I'll never forget that moment. It was quite a tearful moment. But it's important to mention though that in the days after that. So I was out on day one. That was always part of the deal. Ben stayed in the business, and he's still there now. But my family, we'd booked well in advance this family holiday just before Christmas, so I couldn't go because the deal was closing. So that was one of the only times I couldn't, go away with Alex and the kids. Anyway, so I'm at home on my own. The deal's closed. I'm probably moderately hungover as well, which didn't help. But I remember crying with joy. And moments later, crying bereft that it was over. So if we used some running analogies earlier, it's like, imagine training 14 years to run a marathon. You don't get to race in that time, 14 years. And then you race and you win the race. Someone puts the medal over your neck, but you're not allowed to race ever again. Your career's over. It's sort of, I don't know, there was a bit of that feeling, a bit of, wow, we won. But oh my God, you can't take your business back. It's gone. So there's a sense of loss, and probably a profound kind of unnerving moment of like, what's next? Which you have to be calm around that feeling. You have to let that feeling come and go, and let your subconscious do its magical work.
'Cause I guess that, like you said, you relate to grief, right? There's that element of something's come to an end, and did you feel like almost going through an actual grieving? They say there's 7 steps, I think, of the grieving process. What have you felt like that since it's closed or since it's sold? Huh?
Yeah. Not like I'm unfamiliar with what those whole 7 steps are, but I guess so a bit. It wasn't as dramatic. It was just those early days. It was just a sadness that actually the journey was over. It was complete, but very much in equal measure with the joy and the outcome it created for a lot of people, and then a real hope that they make a success of it together, the new business and the colleagues you've left behind. But yeah, I wouldn't say I went through a prolonged window. I was okay. I did welcome the headspace, and we talked about presence. People around me could see it pretty quickly that if I met you for lunch or was at dinner with the children, I was very quickly much more there and in the moment, and I became a much more relaxed person. And I've enjoyed that window of allowing myself to reflect on, what we did and what's next for me.
And so if you can, I guess, like, I'd love to just talk about that. Obviously, over the last couple of years, and you've mentioned about, I guess, for you personally, maybe asking a lot of questions inward and a bit of searching and stuff, and maybe some darker times as well during that period. Are you like to share some of around that time, and I guess why you struggled in that period, and how you sort of come out of it and where you are now? Yeah,
I think the tricky bits have been more at home. So it's not about where I go next. Pretty relaxed about that. It's interesting though, and I was very naive, if I'm honest. I'd been out at work constantly driving this thing, and all of a sudden I was at home a lot in my wife's environment. So what was initially probably quite nice, I think it didn't play out, I suppose, harmoniously, because I started to think, well, what's as a husband, what's the best thing I can do? Well, I'll do the shopping, I'll cook the meals, I'll wash up, I'll do this, I'll do that. And I didn't realise I was probably like encroaching, de-rolling, whatever it is, at the same time that my wife, was seeing her role as a mother with the children now. Barnaby's 15, Molly's 13, as they start to, I suppose, push us away a little bit. I added to that uncertainty. And so I think I didn't see that coming. That led to some tricky moments, unbeknowingly to me. But yeah, but in terms of me, I think it was like year one. Year one was actually all right. Letting myself gently come back in terms of my energies. And like today, meeting you for the past 6 months, so it took at least a year. My energies are like fully back. I could lead a company tomorrow. Not that I'd want to make, we talked about the equation.
Yeah.
Not that I'd want to make the sacrifices that would be necessary, but I could lead a company tomorrow and I could drive it. I could give it what it needed from an energy point of view. And that is key. Like the energy we talked about, the drive, like you've got to be able to give something that. But I think, at the moment, it's what comes first is, Alex and the kids, being present for them when I get time with them, and spending, an appropriate amount of time with them. And then it's myself. My relationship with myself is is really fundamental at this junction in my life. Some of the things I alluded to in my childhood, in those early years, I come working with somebody to soothe them, because you don't know it, but they're playing a role in how you behave in certain ways as an adult. So I'm just kind of, it's nothing too deep, but I'm essentially working on those instances that I've identified in order to improve me today. And by the way, I didn't know until probably 6-7 months ago I even had these traumas in my life. But I know I'm getting to know myself a lot more, and I'm working on that harmonious relationship with me. I continue to invest in my health overall. I'm an avid runner. I'm deeply connected to the running community here. I think it's a tremendous sport for your mind and your body. But around that, I'm doing more. I really like breathwork. I know that that's talked about a lot now, so I'm not sharing anything new. But I just started doing Wim Hof's breathwork, or the basic one on his app. And I now call it crying therapy because it somehow just, you don't start it thinking too deeply about a problem, but at the end of an exercise, I find that whatever I was hanging on in me just comes out. And I found that like very enlightening and very rewarding, actually. So I do that quite a lot. And then
conscious connected breathwork, right?
I don't even know that's what it's called. I just
you only because you referenced the crying side of it. I've done 4 sessions of conscious connected, and I've basically sobbed for an hour. But the subconscious like taps into the subconscious, right? And but the release of that suppressed emotion, I guess that's the only way I can describe. I think I have these type of conversations. I feel my cup's full a lot. I have really deep. I feel someone that's really in touch with my emotions. Until I've done conscious connected breathwork, I didn't have no clue of how I'm just suppressing so much
and what
emotion.
your body is holding on to, your mind and your body is holding that. I think it's a brilliant method of bringing it to the fore. And then releasing it a bit. So that I found that fascinating. And then beyond that, I'm spending a lot of time thinking on a community level. So how I'm like you, I'm quite passionate about male suicide, and did a bit of reading around that. So I'm starting training with Samaritans in April. I'm going to be dedicating roughly a day a week to their listening program of work that they do, which will be, I think, I hear the training is phenomenal and gives you a skill you can really use for life. And hopefully by giving some time to that, there's a contribution there. But there's also a network of lovely people around that organisation that, will add to my sense of community here. And beyond that, there's an organisation locally that I'm going to get more involved with the leadership of, hopefully, if the stars align. I can't really talk too much about it, but again, that sense of community, I think it's absolutely vital. And we've spoken in the past about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and if you look at the story we've told today, this young lad grows up in a council estate where everybody knows your business. You can knock on the next door neighbours for a cup of tea or borrow some sugar or whatever, but everyone's looking out for each other because you're on top of each other and you're aware of each other's business, and you're facing potentially adversity because you're trying to make life work, you're trying to strive, you're trying to push on, you're trying to build, to now, today, where large detached house and no neighbours. that's like it. That I do have some neighbours. I have wonderful neighbours, and I hope they're not listening to this going, hold on. But I think it's been quite clear to me in the past couple of years, because I had RocketMill was this huge community, wasn't it? I knew when people had a child, got engaged, moved house. We celebrated these moments in people's lives. I had this huge community there. We all shared this hobby, this existence, this drive, this journey. And I lost that to some degree. I'm still in contact with a lot of people there, but I lost that to some degree. So I think I'm really trying to build a deep connected community or play a part in communities. So I have that sense of roots and belonging and contribution, and people I love and believe in around me. And then on top of that, I think is coming like a layer of purpose. So there's those elements I talked about, and I think I'm also using some of the capital we made to invest as an angel in lots of businesses, both locally and within the UK, to help them grow. And so my hurdles around that, if you like, are: do I love the founders? Do I really believe in them? All the things we talked about today, if they got those ingredients, is it in a sector that I'm inquisitive about? I don't need to be an expert, but does it fascinate me? And then thirdly, do I bring something to the table, not just blindly through arrogance and belief? Like, do I actually, am I going to add something here? Can I really help these people? So I'm doing a bit of work around that, which has been quite rewarding. And it's not, the goal isn't necessarily to go and make a load of money. It really is just to do something that's interesting, that stimulates me intellectually, and to help some other people that were on that journey I was on 14 years ago.
There's so much there in relation to, I guess, start through that journey and I guess elements of feeling a little bit lost after. So when you, like you said, everything's involved in this one thing, and then it's gone, and then you feel a little bit like, and you, like you said, you search and you start again. Where I'm like, it's asking those questions to yourself that when you're on a journey and you've got that purpose and you've got that drive and you've got everything else, you're not asking them questions because you don't necessarily need to. It's when life or whatever it is pauses, stops for some, whether it sell a company, whatever those elements are, you close down, whatever it's just. Then I guess these are the things I'm really curious about. Is that I think what's come out of it, what I hear from you and what I've spoke to a few people about, is that sense of connection, community, contribution. These things are inherent in us that we all sort of crave and we need, right? And I think if lockdown showed us one thing, and even with the with AI and how much we're moving down a route of disconnecting so much because we've got these robots doing all these things, I think all the stuff I'm trying to do and where I'm at in my head and the conversations I have like this, where you go, it's never going to take this away, is it? It's never going to take that level of connection, real human connection and community. As amazing as AI is and as amazing as technology is it can't ever take that away, surely.
No, well, I think there's lots of, editorial headlines made to get your attention will generally veer towards AI is going to destroy us all. The optimistic view would be that it's going to, for the first time, we appear to have a technology that might augment us better than what's gone before. And if it does what it's going to do, which essentially it democratizes knowledge and the knowledge economy to some degree in those types of roles and so on, it might mean that we have to specialise in being more human, which is a great thing. What are we good at? And connecting us to us more, which is a good thing. So I think there's some turbulence on that journey, but I think it could be brilliant for us as human beings and specialising in what we are good at that machines will never be.
I love that, because I really believe like all this stuff, even the things like you've been to the inner set, like the top table, like that type of thing, sitting around a table, really opening up and chatting and conversing and sharing stories, but on a human level. I think that's the growth for me. Like there's a growth. Like of course there's technology and there's an amazing thing, and there's going to be, I guess even from like your point of an agency, so I bet there's loads of space within the AI agency area that there's going to, that's going to blow up. And from a technology point of view, there's massive growth there, right? But at an equal level, I do think there's that. There's this humanness, I guess, that humankind that we're gonna. is where there's a massive growth. The more we can do more of that, use the AI and the technology to, create more time and space for this, to have that human connection. I think there's something magical there, maybe.
Let's hope so.
Let's hope so. Mate, we're coming towards the end. It's fascinating, just a fascinating journey, and taking us through your story, and so much stuff and wisdom to come out of it. I'm so grateful for you sharing it all. I guess I asked you earlier about, if you go back to the start of the business, what advice would you give? What would you go back to that young Sam in his teenage years starting out? Would it be the same advice, being brave, or would there be something else that you'd say?
To me, I actually answered that to me, just to be slightly braver. I think some of our competitors weren't necessarily better, but were braver. I mean, we had hundreds of competitors, but about half a dozen of us did really well. And I think some of those others were, they were just braver. They just went harder at it. They went for bigger clients earlier. They went to the US. I think that we could have done that. By the way, I have no regrets, none whatsoever. We did it in a way that was in accordance with us as people. And I'm incredibly proud of what everybody achieved together, like incredibly proud. But we could have been braver. That's all. I think we did a lot of things quite right.
Back to, I guess, what you mentioned about Ben as well, and that integrity, right? In business.
So I do have one thing that I think maybe could pollinate other people out there, because it's something it's not advice I would give to myself, because it was always there. But I think this is really, it can be quite powerful. It's to seek pride in everything you do. And if you think about that as an anchor around any decision or behaviour, it generally is going to take you to a good place, a place that your impact upon everyone, the environment and the people around you is going to be positive. You're going to be nourishing other people, which is a great thing. You're going to be standing behind decisions, feeling good about them. Not entirely, they're not always self-serving or feathering your own nest. They're good for other people as well. So I think seek pride in what you do and the decisions you make and the behaviours you exhibit. That would be a good thing.
Amazing. Well, look, we've got a closing tradition on the podcast. So, as you have been to one of our Inner Circle dinners, you will know that these are our famous storytelling cards. Choose a card, any card, and pass it back to me, and I'll read it out to you.
Oh, I see.
I'll ask you the question. How has your idea of family evolved?
I think it's just naturally evolved. I don't want to speak too quickly though, because it's one of those that probably deserves. I'll probably go home, and on the walk home, I'll realise I had something more profound to say. But look, it's changed as we have changed. I remember somebody saying recently, when you marry somebody, it's like 6 marriages in one, because we meet in our mid-20s or whatever, 30s, whatever it might be, and pre-children, you're different. Have children, the marriage is a different phase. Go through your middle years together, they're different. Professional journeys like mine might make you different. The kids getting into teens and you becoming an older couple, all different. And your children change. So you remember what I was saying about leadership earlier, that you augment it sometimes in an appropriate way. And I think my idea of family is fundamentally the same. But what it's become, as it's had very different phases. And on a personal level, like I'm really actually quite enjoying my kids being teens. I know everybody else can play. I think I've maybe come into my own a little bit. I've got more to contribute. I was useless when they were tiny. solve that problem with a bottle of wine each night. But yeah, my idea of family is, Sam, it's the same. Like it's critical, and you know, we talked about like balance and the different things. I think I remember hearing somebody say that you've got various, imagine them like balls you're juggling. You've got your professional life, you've got your health, you've got family and whatnot, and friends, and just to think about, some of those balls are rubber, you know, like your professional life. You can drop that ball from time to time and it'll bounce back, you know, go and seek it. But there are some things like family where if you drop that ball, if it's made of glass, it might shatter, and you know, you really have to look after it. And I think I've always had that in my head, you know, it's number one, absolutely above everything. And I think it was the drive you talked about, like it was for my family. You know, that was the wins for them. I remember screenshotting when the money landed on the day of the deal. I screenshotted it instantly and sent it to my wife and said, "This is for us." You know, it's just money, but like that I suppose shows what was in my head all along. It's like, build that safety net. It's family. But yeah, so it's number one. It's the glass ball. Don't drop it.
What a brilliant way to finish, mate. Listen, honestly, thank you. It's been, like I say, it's strange because we've known each other for a long time, but I feel like obviously recently we've spent a lot of time together and really got to know, and you're just, honestly, such an inspiration certainly to me, and I'm sure to all the listeners that will tune in and listen, and people that have watched your journey and what you've done and how you went about it. And I still got a clear memory of watching on social media, and every time someone new started at RocketMill, which especially when you was growing quite quickly, that was often, but you used to do the tunnel and people coming, and I remember watching there and thinking, I'll have a chat with him one day about this. Like that's culture, like that. And you see the excitement in everyone's face, and it's been fascinating to just unpick the journey and share that story of how you've done it and what you've done. So, mate, thank you for your time, and thank you for the inspiration. It's
really appreciate the invitation and the questions and the depth, and I suppose the environment you create in order to have these conversations. You make it very easy. Thanks for having me along.
And as they say, is a wrap.